everyone, welcome back to Relax with Animal Facts. I am Steph Wolf, and today I am going to be learning with you about our furry, scaly, or possibly even slimy friends. And in today's case, it is definitely going to be an animal of the furry variety, and quite furry, might I add, the oh so wonderful squirrel. This, of course, is a very special listener episode dedicated to Joseph and to Andrea. Andrea decided to gift Joseph with this episode suggestion. So Joseph, I hope this episode does not disappoint. And you know what? It is the thought that counts regardless. This podcast would not be possible without both of you and without all of you listening out there from all over the globe. Thank you to everybody who supports the show through Patreon and through PayPal. You guys really, really help the show keep running. And don't worry, for those of you who want to support the show, those aren't the only ways. If you want, you can follow the podcast if you're on Spotify, or you can leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or any platform on which you can do that. That is so big for the show because it helps the show get out to more people who might want to relax right alongside me and you. So in some recent news, we have just passed 1,000 followers on Spotify. And wow, guys, that is such a big milestone for the show. And I am just so abundantly grateful because doing the show is just such a pleasure for me, and talking to you guys when you reach out and seeing how the show has helped you sleep or helped you relax or whatnot is just, it's such a privilege to be able to host this podcast and to read things like that from you guys. So thank you for writing in, thank you for following, and thank you for being supporters of the show. So let's not waste any more time. I am so excited to get into this episode. So as always, I want all of you to sort of scan your body here, see where you're carrying some tension right through our day. If this is at the end of your day, it might be a little different than if you're just starting your day, but many of us carry tension in different places, right? For some people, it'll be in their legs, or for some people, it'll be their lower back or their neck. I can tell you right now, for me, it is definitely in sort of my upper back and my neck area. So I'm going to do my best with you guys to relax those parts of my body as we go into this immersive experience together into the grasslands and pastures where squirrels reside. I got my facts from Discover Wildlife and Mental Floss. So those websites have some great fun facts. So if you ever want to learn more, I always encourage you to go to those websites and read some things for yourself, because oftentimes I don't cover absolutely everything, because otherwise these, with my running tangents, sometimes it can it would take quite a while for me to get finished with the episodes. So the first fact is that the biggest species of squirrel is the Indian giant squirrel, which can grow to an impressive 36 inches. Wow, that is a 1 meter long squirrel, guys. The smallest is the tiny African pygmy squirrel, which is a minute 2.8 to 5 inches. So on this show, we see again and again the different species of these animals carrying such vast differences between one another, particularly in size. We have the giant squirrel being 1 meter long, and we have the smallest squirrel being just over 10 centimeters long on average. I can tell you that for sure, if I saw a 1 meter long squirrel on my lawn, I would think twice about going outside. Squirrels have 4 front teeth, which never stop growing throughout their lives. This ensures that their teeth do not wear down from constant gnawing on nuts and other objects. So there are animals out there that have teeth, and then when they grow out, that's it. They don't grow back. So the reason that this can be a problem is that sometimes their diets can wear down their teeth to a point in which they cannot anymore do that process of mechanical digestion. They won't be able to break open, say, certain things like nuts or whatever's in their diet, and it can make their lives quite a bit harder. But with squirrels, luckily, they have teeth that just don't stop growing. Squirrels can be categorized into 3 specific types, and that is ground squirrels, tree squirrels, and flying squirrels. And I have to say, flying squirrels have to be among some of my favorites. Flying squirrels are able to glide through the air due to the flaps of skin which connect their limbs, providing a wing-like surface. And as we all know, flying squirrels are just such a treat. Squirrels can recognize ripe nuts using their sense of smell. They are also able to tell if an acorn or hazelnut has been hollowed out by weevils by recognizing that the nut is just a little bit too light. In order to find previously buried nuts, they use a combination of memory, smell, and observation of disturbed soil. So here we see squirrels exercising some intelligence there, where not only are they using their sense of smell, they're able to tell, maybe by shaking around those acorns and hazelnuts, if somebody already got there first. And in nature, I think the you snooze, you lose rule definitely applies. Squirrel nests are called drays, which is a fairly interesting name. So they are compact, spherical structures which are slightly lighter than footballs, which are constructed out of leaves, bark, twigs, and grass, and they will be assembled in the forks of some very tall trees at times. I wouldn't think that researchers have a name for squirrel nests, but I suppose they do, and I'm not exactly sure how they got to that name of drays. I'd never heard something like that before. Communication is something that's very valuable, as we know, as I am talking to you in a very sophisticated form of communication, but squirrels communicate using a wide range of calls, such as territorial barks and quacking noises. So I never knew that squirrels can bark too. So maybe when my dog, Molly, she's a precious little golden doodle, when she sees those squirrels, she really lets them know, hey, this is my territory. But I'd like to think now that maybe the squirrels are barking right back and say, hey, out here is actually our territory. Their main form of communication, however, is through their tails. And now this is something that I've noticed personally. Of course, here in Canada, we do have a variety of squirrels. I always see them using their tails. They move around in this kind of weird way, and I've never really questioned what it means. Well, they use their tails as a kind of signaling device, twitching them if they become suspicious of a threat. Squirrels can run up to 20 miles per hour and have padded feet which cushion jumps from up to 20 feet high. So they can absorb a lot of impact, and they can also jump quite high as well. They can use their fluffy tails sort of like parachutes in order to balance themselves during those very high leaps. almost like a rudder on a boat, I can imagine. So just like many boats have rudders where you can steer, right, using it to point a certain direction in the water, when it comes to aerodynamics, squirrels have their tails in order to sort of steer them into where they want to go. Squirrels are one of the most important animals for helping the spread of oak trees. They store acorns in the ground, but only recover about 70% of them, allowing the forgotten acorns to grow into beautiful, healthy trees. So here we see this kind of symbiotic relationship between different things in nature. This is not at all a relationship that is detrimental to one species like a parasitic relationship. This is one in which squirrels can store acorns for food and sometimes can inadvertently plant some trees. Or who knows, maybe squirrels want to plant trees once in a while. Red squirrels were widespread in the United Kingdom until the 1940s, but suffered a sharp decline in numbers and are now classified as an endangered species. Their threatened status is largely down to the rise of the gray squirrel population due to their larger and more robust nature and transmission of the squirrel pox virus. I suppose maybe that is sort of like us as humans going through chicken pox. But now, I have been in contact with red squirrels in Europe before during some of my travels, and I can say that red squirrels can be quite lovely. I have fed them before using little nuts and different things like that, and they're the only squirrel species that I've ever been able to get to come up to me and feed them. So I'm sorry to hear that they're suffering kind of a little bit of a decline there. There are some very unique squirrel species in the world. The tufted ground squirrel, only found in Borneo, I'm not sure how to pronounce that properly, has a tail which is 130% the size of its body. So a very, very large tail. And the kaibab squirrel has a pure white tail and only dwells in the Grand Canyon region of Arizona. I think it's always so cool when we learn about these little differences, or not even little, these pretty large differences between these squirrel species from all around the world, because it shows the true strength, I don't know if strength is the right word, but the depth of adaptation that can occur in very similar animals. Squirrels are organized, and in fact, they are probably more organized than me. A 2017 study found that eastern fox squirrels living on UC Berkeley's campus cache their nuts according to type. Cache not meaning C-A-S-H, but C-A-C-H-E. So sort of that storage of nuts. And they will store them according to the type of nut. When given a mixture of walnuts, pecans, almonds, and hazelnuts, the squirrel took the time to hide each type of nut in a specific place. This method of spatial chunking may help them remember where the nuts are when they go to retrieve them later. Though the study wasn't able to determine this for sure, the study's results suggested that the squirrels may have been organizing their storage of nuts by even more subtle categories like the size of the nuts. For squirrels, I wouldn't think they would be quite so picky and so organized. They would just, have whatever nuts they have, take what they can take, and store whatever they can in whichever way is necessary. And who knows, maybe this is necessary in a way. Maybe for them, knowing which kind of nut is buried where is necessary for memory, as we just learned. But of course, we have to remember to sometimes have a good, healthy dose of skepticism, because here researchers are still learning, and that is all part of the fun. Ground squirrels hibernate in the winter, and the way their brains function while they do may help scientists develop a new drug that can limit the brain damage caused by strokes. When ground squirrels hibernate, their core body temperature drops dramatically. In the case of the Arctic ground squirrel, to as low as 26.7 degrees Fahrenheit. For those of us that use Celsius, that is just about -3 degrees Celsius. We are talking about body temperature here, okay? So that is incredibly low, and possibly the lowest body temperature of any mammal on Earth. And during this extra cold hibernation, a squirrel's brain undergoes cellular changes that helps its brain deal with the reduced blood flow. Researchers are currently trying to develop a drug that could mimic the process in the human brain, preventing brain cells from dying when blood flow to the brain is cut off during a stroke. So this is one of those reasons why I love doing the show and I love learning about nature, because animals can have so many valuable lessons to teach us and they don't even know it. They have mechanisms of which truly boggle the mind and boggle my mind, but may even boggle the mind of some of those researchers. But the mechanism of some of these animals, as well as the mechanisms of nature as a whole, has brought about so many different things for us, and it has promoted scientific discovery like we wouldn't believe. And before we go into the last fact of the episode here, I think it's so cool that I've learned so much about animals that I have right here in my backyard. So the word squirrel comes from skiros, from skia, meaning shadow, and ora, or ura, O-U-R-A, meaning tail, so sort of like shadow tail. And presumably the squirrels of long ago Greece also sat with their bushy tails raised up against their backs. I think Shadowtail is such a cool name and creative name for the squirrel, so I assume it is because when their tails are raised up that they cast a shadow. I'm just guessing there, but that is such a cool fact. So again, this podcast episode is dedicated to you, Joseph, and to you, Andrea. Thank you guys so much for writing in. If you want to write into the show, you can do so by emailing relaxwithanimalfacts@gmail.com, or you can send me a message on Instagram to the account relaxwithanimalfacts. I respond to each and every one of you, and I always get super giddy when I receive anything from you guys. And before we end this show, I am going to do a quick Q&A for you guys. So because we just passed 1,000 followers on Spotify, I thought that maybe some of you would like to learn a little bit more about me. And if you have any more questions, you could always continue to send them in through email or through Instagram. But on the Instagram, I posted a thing saying, hey, if you have any questions for me, Steph Wolf, you can go ahead and send me some, and I will cover them on the show. The first question, or the first two questions rather, come from a user named Ktazo. And Ktazo writes, which animal that you have done a podcast on has surprised you by a fact the most? I think that is such a good question because we cover some very, very strange facts from our furry friends and scaly and slimy friends, of course. You can't forget them. I have to say that it's maybe just because it's so recent is that there is a squirrel somewhere in the world that is 1 meter long. That is just absolutely wild. Ktazo also asks, would you ever do a podcast on something extinct, like a dinosaur? And then brackets writes, please. So you're definitely not the first one to ask that this be covered on the show. I do have on the Patreon an episode specifically on some extinct animals. So if you want to check that out, you can go to the Patreon by visiting Relax with Animal Facts. In the future, I am sure that eventually we will make our way to extinct species, or maybe I can make a whole season on only extinct species. You guys can let me know what you think by emailing or messaging me if that's what you'd like. XO Chill writes, do you have any hidden talents? So I can tell you guys the things that I like and I love to do, but I would definitely not attribute myself as talented in those ways. So I love to play the piano. I love to play chess. I'm a big reader, so those are sort of my interests. But in no ways would I say that I am talented at the piano. I just found it so interesting, and I started playing at first for 30 minutes a day, and here I am a year and a half later, and I love playing jazz and blues and things like that. So while I wouldn't say I have any hidden talents, there are some things that I really, really enjoy, and piano is certainly one of them. Which animal do you think is the kindest? That is quite a tough one. I think we would have to distinguish between wild animals and those that are domesticated, right? Because I might have a bit of a bias here, but of all the animals all around the world, I would have to just go with dogs, right? I have a dog, and I can say that I've gotten more kindness from my dog than I've gotten from some human beings out there that I've come in contact with. So I have to say that dogs are going to have to take the cake on this one. But let me know what you guys think. You could always send me an email or send me a message telling me which animal do you think is the kindest. Helly_Crumb writes, favorite tea? It's funny because tea has become sort of a running joke on the show, but I gotta say I love tea, and I love a lot of different teas. And for my favorite, I have to say, is going to be chamomile. If I could only drink a tea for the rest of my life, it would probably be chamomile. And speaking of chamomile and tea, in the future, I would love to have my own brand of chamomile tea in which you guys can drink along with me the exact same tea I'm drinking. But so I dream. J. Merrickson91 asks, what made you want to start a podcast in the first place? Wow, that is a really good question. And I have to say that the answer isn't exactly so one-dimensional. Firstly, I absolutely love helping people in any capacity that I can, and I think that this podcast, from the messages, from the loving messages I've gotten from many of you, that this podcast is something that really, really helps you guys unwind, relax, learn, and sleep, right? And that makes it all worth it. All the time spent and editing and stuff like that. It all sort of fades into the background when I know that some people are having a positive impact from the podcast. And secondly, I of course love animals. And for those of you that have listened to me for quite some time, or maybe even if you've listened to any of the episodes having to do with a primate species, it first started with a love of primates. And one of my dreams in the future is to travel to Africa and go to a gorilla or an orangutan sanctuary, preferably both at some point, and spend some time with gorillas and work with gorillas or again orangutans or even chimpanzees. But I have a special little soft spot for gorillas and orangutans, so that's specifically why I started the podcast. Jeans412 asks, what do you like to do when you're not making the podcast? Thank you very much for the question, and I have to say that outside of the podcast, I do have quite a busy schedule. but it's filled with things that I love to do as well. So I am in school. For those of you that don't know, I am a student, and it takes up the, I would say, majority of my time. But that doesn't mean I stop doing the things that I like. I always find time to play piano. I always find time to read, even if it is before, after, or in between classes. And I also love to exercise. I think especially during this time in which we're in, where we have to stay, a lot of us have to stay inside, that we don't move around as much. So exercise has been really, really important to me during this time. And for those of you that, just like me, were discouraged that we couldn't go to the gym anymore, or we couldn't do certain things, even if it is some push-ups in your living room, or kind of jogging in place, or skipping, or something, anything is better than nothing, certainly for me. I hope my responses are not too boring, but after all, this podcast is meant to help you relax and to sleep, so I don't blame you if you spaced out. If you paid attention all the way through me talking about me and my personal life, I very much applaud you. I'm sure there would have been more questions. I posted it a little bit late on my Instagram before I recorded the episode, but regardless, thank you so much for the questions you guys submitted, and I hope it gave you a little bit of an insight into who's hosting the show, because I certainly get super giddy and excited when I get to learn more about each and every one of you out there listening from all around the world. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast episode, and I hope to see you on the next episode with the next animal. Take care.